we've talked about favorite characters, but I want to talk about your favorite moment and or moments. We can paint a little bit more than one favorite moment. So, what was a pivotal moment for you, or what was a moment you just really loved?
A lot for me is in the end of the movie, but and we've talked about some, but certainly the Falcon reveal is great. And then a big one for me is, her calling the lightsaber to her. It's such a strong moment, such a great moment for so many reasons. But then I will say, and I guess one more spoiler warning, but when there's the death of Han Solo, we were talking earlier about whether that actual moment had huge impact, and that for a lot of us it probably didn't, almost because we could predict it only because of Harrison Ford even, and
We've
thinking
been talking about it
for so long. But in the aftermath of that, probably the biggest moment that kind of I had the weight of his death is the end when Rey sits down in the cockpit next to Chewie. And it's just like, and the fact that, and they, by the way, they put her in a vest. Right. Star Wars isn't subtle all the time. It's like, she is now going to be the pilot of this ship. Chewbacca is going to stick with the ship and stick with her. And there was something about her like sitting there, knowing Han really liked her, even asked her to be on the crew of the Falcon. Right. So that moment that was probably where I felt like the absence of Han the most in the end of the movie. And that worked really well for me.
Mine definitely were Rey moments. Even though we saw a lot of it in the trailer, I think our introduction to Rey, I love that whole sequence. I thought it was beautiful. That was the first time, I'm like terrible about picking up on score unless it's like really in my face. But that Rey composition was the only new piece of the score upon first viewing that really struck out to me, and I thought that it was just like a lovely piece. Yeah. And just, it was pretty much just a silent sequence of her exploring and coming down, and we get to know her just because of how she's acting, and I adored that. And also the sequence between Rey and Kylo Ren when she really stops him. Yeah. When he realizes just how powerful she is. I thought that was a really interesting, gender play, and also just like showing this new side of these characters and having her really realize what she is capable of.
And showing the doubt within him, because you can always tell he's putting up a facade anyway, and so when she can kind of resist him, Adam Driver I think does a really good job in that scene too, of kind of showing he's trying to act like, I've got this, and then you're like, nope.
And that's the first time we see him without his mask on, too, which I think is a really powerful moment. And, he really embodies the physicality of Kylo Ren, even when he does have the mask on, but when he has it off and you can see his face and that doubt and what you're talking about, I thought that was a really powerful moment from, as we've said, two of the actors and characters who I think were the strongest new additions.
I think, a lot of people are kind of lukewarm on the Han death, but I actually really thought, from the moment he screams out Ben on the bridge, not only is that a huge reveal, but it's like, it was kind of like, this is a father who's trying to control his son, which is like the hardest thing in the world. I think is like it's difficult because you're not going to always take lessons from your dad, especially when you're under the influence of something else. And there was that moment where it looked like, okay, I'm going to give this up. That's how I took it, at least. Like, I'm actually legitimately going to give this up.
And he puts the saber in his hand.
Well, there's that visual cue, right, when the darkness comes down all the way.
And so, to me, all of that worked, and he stabbed him, and that, was horrible and everything. But, the moment that really got me in that sequence is when he touches his face, you're still my son. And I was like, oh, dude. I'm actually, now I'm thinking about it, oh my God, I'm actually starting to cry here. But that, and then when she lights up the saber, I was like, those are my two favorite moments. And then anytime BB-8 was on screen.
Oh my God, again, the BB-8 R2 stuff, I was
when he shot the little grappling hooks out.
No, we haven't even talked about it. The BB-8 thumbs up.
Oh my gosh.
Take all my money. Just take it all.
That was amazing.
If they don't market, well, actually, it's not a very good tie-in, but if they don't market a lighter like that, they're doing something wrong.
They should.
Not a lighter for cigarettes, right? That sticks up in here.
Right.
So yeah, there were so many good moments though, and then action sequence-wise, I think for me, the one that worked the best was the Falcon, through the wreckage on Jakku.
Yeah.
Did you see it in 3D? It was 2D for you. So
2D.
We all saw it in 2D. I hate 3D, but this is the first movie where I was like, if the 3D is done right in the theater I see it in,
Right.
I think that the 3D could be really cool in this movie, especially in like sequences like that, because I think JJ's so good with the camera of really getting you into the scene and feeling like you're moving with them. So yeah, I'm like, I have not seen that yet, but when I do see it, I'm excited.
That was a great sequence, and then I did love the lightsaber fight overall. That being both the Finn portion and the Rey portion, just because it was sort of very different than anything we've seen. These sort of young characters who all were kind of just being very brutal and blunt. Kylo Ren's the only one who has any training, but you still know he doesn't have all the training. And there was just something very capturing the desperation that I think all three characters have. That was really well done. It wasn't it wasn't the super choreographed prequel stuff, but it also wasn't sort of the more like slow stuff of the original trilogy. It was just something in between of just like slashing at each other. And when he used the cross guard to pierce his shoulder, that was I winced in that moment, and it was also like, see where that cross guard can come in handy.
They're all doubting.
That's right.
You and McGregor, you're wrong.
But I think it's interesting. I mean, we talked to Adam Driver and John Boyega, and they both said essentially what you're saying, which is that the original trilogy was stage combat. The prequels were more of a dance, and then this one is what John Boyega said is it's ignite to kill. And you feel that, and like we as the audience know. No, a Jedi can't kill. But, if the Earth literally hadn't separated Kylo, Ben, and Rey, I got the sense she would have killed him. And I'm like, would that have been a point of no return for her, that she was ready to do that?
That's the point of, forget it.
You're just going to keep
You
going
just want
back
the
to
musical version of this movie.
Going back to the Phantom of the Menace.
the Phantom of the Menace.
So I agree. I think it's weird because like the emotional beats of that lightsaber fight were all, like it had some of the emotion of the best lightsaber fights that we've seen. And I think you dismiss the prequels. That's one of the things that's the most wrong with the prequels for me, is that when those dances start, you don't care enough about the proceedings to be like, I don't want to see anybody get hurt in this fight. And you also don't feel like they're going to necessarily get hurt until they die.
With the exception of the Darth Maul, Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, which I still think is like one of the best lightsaber battles.
But like beyond that, after that, I feel like, I know you really like the one from Sith, but this had that emotional element that it needed to have in order to be like one of the great lightsaber battles.
I mean, on one hand, it's funny because there is a stretch on the fact that Rey has absolutely no training. Even the fact that I was laughing about the fact that I'm like, man, it took Luke like 3 years to pull a lightsaber into his hand. And she just did it, which of course raises questions about, who is she? Is she just someone innately powerful with the Force, or is there more of a biological thing going on? But I still think they really did sell. And I think also, of course, it's supposed to be like, hey, she's good fighting with the staff. That's like, so she's already like got some skills in that arena. And I think you are invested at that point with all three characters and where they're coming from. So that means everything.
I mean, we're going to get into questions we have and solutions for that. But I think she has had some training. I think she probably, I think when she goes back to Luke at the end, it's a return to Luke. It's not,
you have a good theory about that.
Yeah, well, I'm actually stealing a theory from Daniel from Rebel Base. We were talking about it a little bit. I don't want to really give away his whole theory, but like, what if she was, there in training?
We know there were people who Luke was training.
Yeah, so I'll let him expound on it. But there's possible that she had training. She knows how to fight already. Maybe that's from defending herself on Jakku. Maybe it's more than that. But I also think if everybody, like these Force-sensitive people, can notice that she is now in the world and like, sort of attuned to the Force as acutely as she is now, like, she's powerful because she's causing like ripples in the Force. You know that like if people are sitting up and taking notice, Force Awakening.
The Force is awakening.
Then like she's there to be awesome.